Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 8 of the Founders Talk. This is where we bring founders from different industries and different verticals to talk with us. Our audience is at a strong, we're nearing about 100 people or so, which is great. Thank you all for making it here on a Saturday evening. We have a great session ahead of us. I'm Srinath. I'm a Flame alumni and an incoming student for our PGPEI program, and I'll be your host for the evening. Admissions for that close on August 15th, for those of you who are curious. So I think this session is going to be amazing for most of our audience. We have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs and students here, and they're going to absolutely love the session. We'll be talking about how to create your own business plan with Mr. Advait Kurlekar. Our session will go on till 6, and all of you who have questions, please ask me questions. You can ask both during and after. Add it to the Q&A box. It'll be in the bottom area in the middle, add it there, and we'll keep asking Sir the questions on the go. So now I think a little bit about our speaker. Mr. Advait Kurlekar is the CEO of Upahan Marketing Consultants and has over 27 years of valuable experience in management consulting and coaching. And he's worked in leading organizations like Tata Motors, AF Ferguson, PwC, Sader Consulting, and KP Consulting. Advait has expertise in the area of business strategy and HR consulting. He's an expert in using the balanced scorecard framework, for those of you who are familiar, to drive strategic business outcomes, and has directed over 350 successful BSc strategy implementation projects for a variety of clients around the world. Advait has led consulting and coaching assignments across a range of sectors from BFSI, engineering, automotive, retail, pharmaceuticals, and so many more. And he's also an internationally recognized keynote speaker. Advait's also a visiting faculty at SP Jain's Global Center of Management, and he's certified independent director and is on the board of SVPU Research Foundation, and is also on the board of advisors of MIT School of Management, IMDR, Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, Pune, Jagran Lake City University, Bhopal, and he's also a charter member of our TIE very own Pune chapter. We're super excited to have you, sir. Over to you.
Thanks, Srinath. Thanks, Madhuri. Thanks, Darshan. Thanks, Flame, for having me over. And thanks for the 100+ people who have spared their Saturday evening an hour to listen to me. I have a couple of things to share in terms of how to create your own business plan. And as Srinath mentioned, if there's anything that you hear that you have a doubt, you don't agree, or you've not understood, or you see on the screen, and you want to ask a question, please put that question in the chat, in the Q&A box, and Srinath will pick them up for me. And if it is relevant to what we're discussing immediately, I've asked him that not an issue, he can stop me and ask that question. And to the best of my ability, I'll try and answer. Or if it is a generic question, then we can anyway take it towards the later part. So I'll now share the screen. I hope you can see the screen now. Yes, Nina?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good to go.
So the topic that has been given to me is creating a business plan, and I've just restricted to say that creating your own business plan. I'm hoping and assuming that there are many entrepreneurs and student entrepreneurs or people who want to get into business who are part of the audience, and for them, it's not about just creating a business plan or downloading some template from Google, but actually customizing it to your own requirements. And that's why I'm calling it creating your own business plan. Has it gone to the next slide?
No, sir. I think it's still on the first one.
Okay, maybe the thing doesn't work. Okay. Okay, so quick introduction of beyond what Srinath has done. Are you seeing the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So as he mentioned, I run a boutique consulting company based in Pune called Upahan, and this is the kind of work that we do for our clients: strategy, process, people, and little bit on the knowledge side. These are some of the sectors that we've done more work than some other sectors. Just about covers all the important sectors in the economy. Consulting is a traveler's job. Somebody actually asked us, how much do you travel? And we actually put this down and calculated in recent times. Mind you, This is, of course, pre-COVID. Last 4 months, there's hardly been any travel, as all of you would understand. And more than 22 odd cities in India as well, just not just international travel, domestic travel as well. And just to give you a feel, these are some of the clients that we've done recent work with, right from MSMEs to large multinational corporations is what we've done work with, either in strategy or in process, HR, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to focus on these 2-3 things for today, given the limited time. When Darshan asked me to do this, I've done this like I'm doing now or trying to do now in 1 hour. Otherwise, it's a half-day session. After it's a 1-day session, it could be a 2-day session. I know there's no limit to it, but I'm trying to restrict myself to 50 minutes now. So let's understand what a business plan is, just to be on the same page and on the right page. And then what are the components of the business plan, and when or how or why would you want to update that business plan? Because a lot of myths about business plan are there in the startup world or the entrepreneur world. So as the phrase goes, business plan is a plan, but when it's a plan, it cannot be in your head. It better be in some kind of written document. And because the plan is about your business, it cannot be just a financial plan. All aspects of the business have to be taken into consideration when you're writing your own business plan, which is strategic, which is financial, which is customer, which is market, which is operational, which is team, which is funding, so on and so forth. So very simplistically, that's a quick definition in terms of how would I want to look at what a business plan is. Like I said, it has to be a written document. It can be 1 page, it can be 100 pages. It depends on how detailed you want to go and how clear you are in terms of what you want to achieve for your business and for your startup or for your company for that matter. Even if you're an employee and you're part of the strategy team, you still need to have this in place. There was some discussion earlier in some other forum that I was participating in, in fact, today morning with some other business school. And there was a question that, is this relevant in today's times at all? And maybe I'll talk about it towards later, because I anyway have a section in terms of how, when, and why do you need to update that business plan. So that's a quick definition of what that business plan is. Let's also understand that when we are looking at corporate business strategy and running a business, running a startup, running an enterprise, where does this business plan fit in? So typically, every business, whether it's a startup, whether it's a 100-year-old company, whether it's a small, whether it's a large organization, needs to have some semblance of what I call a vision or a mission kind of statement or a document. It definitely needs to have a strategy, and then of course a business plan, and that business plan then that gets converted into what is called an operational plan budget. So it is in this part is where the business plan fits in. It is starting with vision, mission, strategy, but between the strategy and your operational budget, which is a 1 period kind of thing, typically 1 financial year, is where your business plan should be in. So it is very, very much strategic by any stretch of imagination, because anything that is related to your vision, mission, and of course your business strategy has to be slightly long-term, has to be in terms of beyond what you're normally thinking in terms of period to period, quarter to quarter kind of thing. So it has to fit in the larger picture, larger scheme of things when you're thinking of business plan. So that's the place of business plan in the entire thought process that you need to have as far as your business is concerned. The role it plays, of course, is multifaceted. There are at least 6-7 different ways in which you can look at business plan. I'm going to talk of at least 2 or 3 things that I believe are more important than some others. First and foremost, it should and it will create, it should help you create a future roadmap for your business. That's the primary objective or role of a business plan. That can I use this structure of a business plan document to have some kind of future roadmap as far as my business is concerned. And if it's not, if your business plan is not doing that, then your business plan is just a document. There is something seriously wrong in the construct of that business plan. But if it is not talking of a future roadmap in terms of where do you see your business, your enterprise, your startup in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the future, then it's not a business plan. So you have to ensure that you're talking of a future business plan. The second is And very importantly, it helps develop and communicate a course of action. Development part is easier part, but I think the key word here is communication. And the reason why I'm saying that is that very often, and this is not just for startups or entrepreneurs, even with large corporates where we've done consulting work, very often it is themed that, okay, our business plan, our strategy is confidential. Of course, it is confidential, but confidential from whom? Confidential not from the people who need to implement. Confidential is not from people who need to understand what that business plan is and therefore need to take actions or initiatives to help deliver that business plan. It can be confidential, obviously, from your competitors' perspective, from the external world perspective, but not confidential from your own internal team. Even if you are a startup, as long as you are not the only one founder and only the sole employee of your startup or your enterprise, if you have a co-founder, if you have at least 2-3 people whom you believe are close to you, who are going to lead and help you develop this business, grow further, then you need to sort of take them into confidence and communicate what your thoughts are. Again, going back to where we started, because you're translating your vision mission into a strategy, into a business plan, they need to be also as enthused as you are, as a founder, as a startup entrepreneur, in terms of what this business is leading to. And therefore, that communication is very, very important. And of course, it needs to provide clarity in terms of your growth, in terms of what exactly are you doing, how are you going to grow, where are you going to grow, when are you going to grow, what are the different revenue streams, what is the product roadmap, what is the service roadmap, how are you going to scale up. And again, I'm not going to use the word pivot, because you may not want to immediately look at pivoting as part of your business plan. It might be a contingency plan, but given whatever idea you have you validated that idea? Have you communicated that idea? Have you sort of converted that idea into kind of a growth plan? Is what a business plan should do. So there are 3 things here. One is, of course, it's a future roadmap. It's a means of communication to your own team, and should be very clear in terms of how you want to grow in the next couple of at least 2 to 3 years, if not more. So that's a quick introduction in terms of what or why business plans are important for any startup or any business. So let's understand that when we are talking of a business plan, typically what all should it cover? Since I've been talking of vision and mission, I will start with that your business plan has to have some semblance of a statement, if not of an entire document, called what is your mission and what is your vision. Now, without getting into too many details, there are different definitions in terms of what a mission is and what a vision is. Is vision the larger thing and mission sort of supporting that? Or is mission the larger thing and is vision supporting that? Either which way, both schools are there. Like in business, there is no right or wrong. Let me follow one school of theory where the way a mission statement gets defined is in terms of why, what is the purpose, why do we exist? Yeah. So if a mission statement is, you define your mission in terms of, okay, if I'm starting this business, if I've started Upon as an entrepreneur 10 years ago, why did I start this? Why do I exist? Not me as advice, but why does this company, why does this business, why does this startup, why does this enterprise exist? And I need to answer that question first before even I start thinking in terms of what do I want to do. So what is the main purpose? And that's a mission statement. Let's look at a couple of mission statements from well-known companies who at once upon a time, of course, were startups. Uber, their mission statement, they believe they exist to bring transportation for everyone, everywhere. Yeah, and a couple of years ago, there was one more phrase in that, like flowing water, they used to say, or freely available water for everywhere, for everyone. Then perhaps they realize that as they're expanding into not just developed countries, but developing countries, perhaps freely available water is not as omnipresent as they thought, and therefore they've removed that, but they're still saying it's being transportation for everywhere, everyone. Pinterest, bring everyone the inspiration to create a life they love. And that's how they want to define that. Why have we started this business? And not the best of examples in the current times, but WeWork, for whatever it's worth, create a world where people work to make a life, not just a living. So the entire co-working space we are believing is not just to work, but to make a life kind of thing. It's not just come to office for work. They want to create that kind of ambience and that kind of infrastructure in terms of their co-working spaces. If you look at vision statements, then if you take mission statement as a definition in terms of why you exist or what is the basic purpose of why you have set up this business, then in that context, vision statement then becomes what is your definition of success? How do you want to define success? Obviously, it will be over a period. So for some, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, kind of thing. But whichever way, how do you define success? And therefore, it will have a timeline. Normally, your mission statements will not change because you will not repurpose your organization. As you expand, you will validate and keep on validating that purpose, but very rarely you will repurpose your organization. But your definition of success can be different. When I'm starting up, maybe when do I reach 1 crore of turnover can be my definition of success. Once I reach close to that, 1 becomes 5. Once I reach 5 crore, 5 can become 20. So that the definition, the horizon of your vision statement can keep on changing. The definition of success can keep on changing. And therefore, you need to look at it at that point in time. So if you're looking at for example, Disney statement, be one of the world's leading producers and providers of entertainment and information. Some point in time, Disney used to have a vision statement called make everybody happy, but maybe they were not very clear in terms of what that means. And therefore they have sort of come out with slightly different kind of statement. If you look at IKEA, all of us know what IKEA is, to create a better everyday life for the many people. And if we look at one more, which is again not a corporate but a NGO or a not-for-profit kind of person, their vision is a just world where people are valued and treated equally, a world without poverty. Of course, they are dealing in a very different kind of situation, or their reason is different to exist. They're not exactly for profit. So whether you are a social enterprise or a social startup, or you are a for-profit normal kind of corporate, you still need to give a try in terms of understanding and giving yourself a clarity first in terms of why you exist, what's your mission, and how do you want to, at this point in time, define what success means for you. And as you can see from any of these statements, especially on the vision statement, you need not necessarily have, like I said, 1 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore, 1 million, 1 billion. You need not necessarily have a number, whether it's a top line, bottom line, market share, market cap, whatever. You can have, but not necessarily so. So that's what I wanted to say. But when you are starting on a business plan, I think this is a good starting point to have clarity in your mind first, and give that clarity to your immediate team members. If you have co-founders, of course, you would do this development together, but to give that clarity to your immediate team in terms of what your mission and vision statement is. So that's the first part of what a typical your business plan should be. The second part,
I think before we move on, one of the questions the audience member asked, FD asked, was, what stage of the business? So let's say you're a startup, right? And a lot of things, a lot of variables are really not thought out through more often than not. So at what stage do you think the startup founder should sit and say, it's time that I create a business plan and think about, the next, whatever the timeline for the business plan is, and when should they make that initiative?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So first and foremost, if you're looking at from a startup perspective, you start up because you think you have an idea. Now, the challenge is for every entrepreneur and every startup guy is that, unfortunately, every idea need not be a business. So the first and foremost you need to do without this business plan, etc., is to ensure that your idea is, for lack of any word, I'm using the word businessable. That means your idea is, you can validate that idea and you can convert that idea into a business. Once you do that, which means you're now convinced that this idea can become a business, that's when time comes that, okay, if I think I have a business in the future, I need to have a business plan for that business. If you're not sure in terms of what you want to do, it's like, the good old days, some Miss World and Miss Universe always used to say that I want to work for world peace. It doesn't mean anything. And it's just something to say because anyway, they are contracted to do some charity work for the 1 year till somebody else gets crowned that title. But jokes apart, if you believe that you have an idea which is sound and which you can create a business out of it, which is not one time but reasonably sustainable, as long as you do that correctly, that is the time when you should start thinking of a business plan. I hope I've answered the question.
Got it.
Should I continue?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So then, of course, when I say company, it need not be a private limited company. It can be partnership. It can be proprietary. I'm not getting into the legal part of it, but you need to then describe what your business is about. When you're starting something, it's, as I said, different legal entities exist. So if you're a lone so-called co-founder with a couple of employees, you can continue as a proprietary firm, or you can have a partnership, limited, unlimited liability, convert it into a private limited company. There are different kind of legal entities, and but whatever it is, you need to be very clear in terms of how do you want to describe what you are trying to do, assuming that you know what is the purpose and you have identified that the definition of success. And like I answered in the previous question, before that you've obviously validated that that idea can be converted into a reasonable, successful, sustainable business. So that's the second part in terms of company business. I've just taken an example from our own website in terms of, what does this kind of, so if you have a website, or at least just one slide on a PowerPoint, which says that, okay, what exactly are you trying to do? What is your story? What does this business do? Presumably you have a name for that business, and therefore, you can have in terms of what are you trying to do. You mentioned, Srinath, in my introduction that I'm also part of TIE, the world's largest nonprofit for this thing. So, for example, our website, TIE Global website, also has in terms of, okay, what are our goals, what are our objectives, what does fostering entrepreneurship mean, so on and so forth. It can be, if you don't have a website yet, if you're really startup, you still can have a slide or two in terms of sort of, because eventually, if your first thing before you get into funding, etc., is to try and see if you can get some associates, could be employees or could be co-founders, and you'll need some document to share with them or talk to them or take them through in terms of what do you have in mind and why are you looking for help, or why you want people to join you, either as employees or either as co-founders. So there has to be something kind of thing, and the best way to start is describe what you're trying to do. Again, it is easier said than done. Sometimes we mix our product description, our service description with a company description, and these three things are different. Which is the second point I was coming to in terms of, obviously when you have an idea which you think you can create a business out of it, you're either have something in mind, which is a product or a service or a productized service or a serviceized product, depending on how do you want to market yourself. But there has to be something that you want to take to the market. Hopefully you'll find some customers, hopefully they'll be paying customers, hopefully you get revenue, and hopefully you'll get profit. That's the entire objective of what you want to do. So again, I'm just taking a client of ours, which is into poultry and poultry products, ready to cook kind of products. And their website obviously gives a huge range in terms of what are the different products that you want to do. It could be products, it could be services, it could be subscription services, SaaS, whatever it is. But finally, you need to be clear, what is my monetizable unit? Is it a product? Is it a subscription? It is a service or whatever. Pricing is different. Pricing is a policy. You can give it free, you can call it free, freemium, premium, whatever you want to call it. But first and foremost, you need to be clear that this idea, which I'm going to convert that into a business, what is that unit that I'm selling? Is it one product, one service, 1 year of subscription, 20 products bundled together? That is a different part. But I need to be clear, and I need to be very clearly able to describe what exactly am I going to sell? What are my potential customers going to buy? They might be buying free for now, but still, what are they going to buy? That is the product or service kind of description. The very important part that you need to do is what we call the market analysis. This will actually tell you that how true you really think your assumptions were when you thought that your idea is, as I use the word, businessable. Yeah, everybody comes with a great idea, saying that, hey, I've come up with a fantastic idea. I'm the first one in the world. There's a huge market. Nobody is there, etc., etc. And through WhatsApp messages and through all the websites that we see, we always say, you're at a path, and this road is all well trodden. This road is where no one has taken. You should take this road. But again, I'm saying be conscious, be aware. If somebody has not taken that road, there is a possibility, you should actually at least consider that possibility, that because somebody has not taken that road consciously. It is not that you just got up today morning and you are the only person who are thinking that let me carve my own path. Yeah, maybe everybody else has gone down and never come back because it's a path that you're not supposed to take, and therefore everybody's gone this way. And again, there are theories about this blue ocean and red ocean and that kind of thing. But, it's not always possible for you to create your own blue ocean. It's okay if your product or service is also me too. It's okay if you're not the first one in the world, that you have come out with this great idea, etc., etc. But whatever it is, you have to be sure that you've analyzed your market very well. I think it goes as a very famous statement that, yeah, you've identified a gap in the market, but be very, very clear if there is a market in that gap. We all go after gaps in the market, but maybe, there is no market in that gap. And this market analysis, a very, very important part of the business plan, you will sort of validate whether there is really a market in the gap. First, is there a market? Is there a gap in the market? And two, is there a market in that gap? So typically, you'll do one or more of these things in terms of, sort of sizing the market size, structure, trends. Is it growing, degrowing? Is it sort of geometric growing kind of thing? What kind of opportunities there? And you have these TAMs and SOMs and whatever target market and relevant market and opportunity market and all the marketing speak that happens. Very clearly, you need to be very clear in terms of the cost structure and the underlying profitability in the industry that you're talking of, whichever product or service that you have. There could be physical or digital distribution. So I have this product or a service, and there are customers all over the world. How does my product or service reach them? Is it an email? Is it a CD? Is it a physical product? I need to think through that. And what are the critical success factors that are there that will make or break people like me in this business, where I now believe that not only there is a gap in that market, but there is also a market in that gap. And of course, without getting into too many details, a lot of people, there are a lot of these frameworks that are available. There is a macroeconomic framework that looks at PESTEL, which is political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal kind of environment that you would operate in should you start this business, and the impact it would have in terms of your own kind of thing. Just as an example, let's take legal. So if something suddenly becomes illegal for tomorrow, my business has to shut down. Or legal stroke regulatory. Yeah, I'm opening a fantastic restaurant. I have a great idea, fusion food, whatever, gastronomic delight. But this pandemic happens and government says, hey, you're not allowed kind of please shut your restaurant for an indefinite period of time. And okay, some of my people, other people in the same business have started some kind of delivery or pickup. But because I'm so crazy about the kind of food I'm giving, it is not possible to give parcels. It is not possible to do home delivery. Because my business depends on people coming because, the experience, etc., etc. And I can't ship that experience in a box. If that is there, then, that's some factor that you need to think about. Then, of course, there is this, again, what is called the Porter's value chain, in terms of, what is the entire value in the industry that you've chosen, in the product or service segment that you've chosen, and which part of that value chain you believe you want to contribute. In a way, it is make versus buy kind of decision that you want to take. What part of the value chain you want to do that's core to my business? What will I outsource and what will I insource? That part of it. And then, of course, there is this Porter's 5 forces, which is another framework to understand, that how easy or difficult it is for somebody to get into me. Is it a also ran kind of thing? If I have had this great idea, will somebody else also come in? How easy or difficult it is? Are there any barriers? If I start, is it becoming too difficult for me to exit if this doesn't work? As a startup, like they say, the pivot, how easy or difficult it is for me to pivot? What is the competitive intensity between me and my suppliers, whether for my product or service? Where does the kind of bargaining power lie? Between me and my customers, where does the bargaining power lie? You have to need to analyze all this to understand that what do you need to do, how do you need to create your own business model, because you need to understand all this. And of course, there are other frameworks like the, first there were 4, then there were 5. Now, last count, there were some 7 P's in marketing: product, place, price, promotion, process, people, etc., etc. So how does all this impact in terms of me taking my product or service to the market, which I have originally identified that yes, there is a gap in the market and there is a market in that gap. So that's the kind of market analysis that one needs to do.
Sir, I think if you could go back to the previous slide for 1 second.
Yeah.
Right. So I think one of the questions that somebody might have is, as a startup founder, right, when you typically see something like this and there's a lot of different variables, more often than not, they haven't figured these things out. And it might seem scary at first to say, you really need to do the market study to figure all of these things out. What do you think should be the mindset behind approaching it, right? Is it to be, I'm conscious about my assumptions, or should you really, where do you draw the line of, maybe over analyzing it before executing?
Yeah, I think very important question you're asking, Srinath. The first consciousness that you need to have, and you have to be sort of mindful, is that maybe I am wrong in my assumptions. Maybe the world is not looking out for this great idea that I have in my product or service. Unfortunate myth about why startups fail. When I ask this question, most of the people will say because of lack of funding. That is the third most important reason, not the first most important. The first most important reason why, as an example, of every 50,000 startups that happen in India every year, about 45 to 46,000 fail in the first 3 years, not because of funding, but because they have not been able to identify correct market opportunity. So yes, it is, some of these frameworks might be, oh, why, what am I getting into? I'm not even an MBA kind of thing. This looks like all MBA stuff. Fair enough. But at least understand the commonsensical part of this, because at the end of the day, strategy is common sense in hindsight. Unfortunately, it's in hindsight. So when I say that, okay, for your great product or for your great service, look at what is the market trend, look at the market growth, look at the market opportunity, look at, are you the only person? Please think in terms of how do you want to reach your product or service to your eventual consumer or buyer. Yeah, because how do I want to market myself? The 7 P's of marketing. Do I need to think in terms of my relationship with my vendors? Because I'm not going to make everything that I'm doing. Do I need to think in terms of my relationship with my customers? No, if I'm paying sort of what they call the panja with them, who's going to win, me or my customer? Yeah, I'll give a simple example. Let's assume that you are a diamond jewelry kind of startup. Yeah, not all startups need to be tech. So I'm not saying you're a diamond tech. You're a diamond company. You're a jewelry company. You might be selling online. That's a different thing. Now, you're a small startup. Even if you're big, the same thing holds true. Now, when you're buying, your relationship with your vendors, you're small, but your vendors are big. For them, you are nobody. You're the 10 decimal place in their scheme of things. Yeah. So when you are trying to see between me and him, who will blink first, it is me. So bargaining power when I'm buying my raw material, whether it is gold, platinum, or diamond, is with unfortunately, my supplier. When I'm selling to my customers, or I might be selling to retailers, they are big. They have 20,000 other people like me. Even if I want to say my designs are unique, my manufacturing is great, blah, blah, blah. But they have 20,000 other people like me. So I'm still relatively small. So again, when I say where is the bargaining power between me and my customers, unfortunately, it is with the customers. If I don't understand this, then all the assumptions that I'll make in terms of my ramp up, in terms of my pricing, in terms of my costing, all that will go for a toss. So you need not follow all this in the true management MBA style kind of thing. but you still need to understand. Look at that value chain. Let me take the same example. I need gold, I need diamonds, I need platinum, I need designers, I need manufacturing, and I need some kind of distribution chain. Going by that jewelry chain, yeah, designs can be mine. Now, if I say that I have started this business because I have some great designs in mind, then maybe I have what I am doing, make versus buy, is only the design part. I'm not going to buy a gold mine. I'm not going to buy a diamond mine. Obviously, I'm going to buy gold and diamond and platinum. So that is clearly a buy decision for me. I'm not going to manufacture my own jewelry. I need to vendors. So again, that's not a buy decision for me. Not a make decision for me. Sorry. I might say that, okay, I'm online, but am I going to physically deliver? No, I'm going to use a courier service or Amazon service or whatever. So then in that value chain, where is my core value? And how do I make it sustainable? How do I make it unique? If I don't think about this, then what's this business and what's this business plan? So again, these frameworks might look too complex, but they are very, very important and they're very simple once you start understanding what they mean to you when you are creating your business.
Okay.
I hope I've answered your question.
Yes. And one other, I think, question that I'm getting in the Q&A boxes, you mentioned the first and the third most common reasons for startup failures. What's number two?
Number two is not finding a correct team, and I'll come to that. Yeah. So first and foremost is not identifying the market opportunity. I thought, wow, everybody is just waiting for my product and service. Unfortunately, it's not so. Second is I'm not able to convince a larger team to work with me, saying that how great my idea is. And then, of course, third part is funding. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Which is the second part here, which is the management team. And you need to have a management team. Ideally, as part of TIE, when we do all our mentoring to startups, we say that you might be a single co-founder right now, but very soon you need to have at least 2, if not 3 overall, total 1 plus 2 co-founders in your team. Why? Because you need to ensure that at least 1 or 2 more people are equally passionate about what you're trying to do, equally bought in terms of what you're trying to do. And for them, then working with you is not a job. It is their passion. And they're trying to convert that passion, or I would say they're trying to monetize that passion with you, along with you. And they are with you on your side of the table. And then, of course, with that, you need a credible management team. As a startup, you're not going to get the best of people because you may not be able to afford them, etc., etc. But whatever people you're able to managing, you have to ensure that there is a good kind of mix in terms of their capability, their competency, their experience, your skill set. A lot of people, we've seen startups, and currently we are interviewing a large number of startups as part of TIE Pune for our mentoring program, which is called Nurture. And a lot of people say that, okay, we are 3 co-founders because we were classmates from engineering college, or we were classmates from business school, and all of us were doing finance. And now it's a fintech kind of startup. All of us were doing marketing, and it's a product kind of thing. Or all of us were from IT, and now it's some kind of techie, AI, ML, IoT kind of startup. It's great that you have 3 people who are from the same function, but from a startup perspective, that's actually a no-no. I'd rather have my team with a well-rounded kind of experience set. So if I think that I'm majored in marketing, I want somebody who understands finance better than me. I want somebody else who understands operations and kind of thing, manufacturing if it is required, better than me. I need somebody to understand technology better than me, because I need technology, I need manufacturing, I need finance also, other than marketing, to make this startup successful. And that's why the management team is critical. I'm just giving you a share. This is one of our mentee companies. I've been working with them for the last 2 years, but they are again into AI kind of thing, but they again have different kind of experience. Although they have AI, but somebody's in sales, somebody's in manufacturing, the development, somebody is on the supply side kind of thing. So you need to show some kind of well-rounded leadership team, because when the third part comes in play, and I'm not going to talk much of it today in terms of the funding, the first thing any PE or VC or angel will say is not your product, not your service, not your great idea, but what is your team with you? Forget me convincing me as an angel investor. Have you been able to convince at least one or two people to work with you before you ask, before you come to me for funding? That's the real thing that is important. Then once you've understood the market and the situation and the environment that you have, then it is important that you then start working on what is called a marketing plan. That means how are you going to make the world known that, hey, you exist, this is the product that you have, this is the service that you're offering, and how are you going to, like I have been saying, how are you going to reach your product or service to the potential buyer, user, or your customer? Yeah, that goes in a marketing plan. And it's not just a startup thing. Even a company as global and as successful as Starbucks would have a very detailed marketing plan. And some of the things that we talked about, Porter's 5 forces, etc., they've also been using. They also have a mission statement. They also have a company description. They've also looked into threats of new entrants, etc., etc., etc. So it's not that this is relevant only for a startup company or other way. That is, oh, okay, only the big companies can afford to have this kind of marketing plan. I'm a startup, I need not have. Without a marketing plan, how do you, again, take your product, take your service to your potential buyers, to your potential customers? So you need to be very clear in terms of what you want to do. Then, of course, one more important aspect of a business plan is the operationalizing part of it. Great, I have an idea, I have validated that idea. Yes, there is a gap in the market. I believe there is a reasonable market in that gap. I have a team. I know how I'm going to take the market, but finally, how am I going to deliver? Yeah. So even if I'm a tech company, how am I going to develop it? How am I going to debug it? How am I going to have a good UI base for that? How am I going to sell it? I need to be very, very clear on the brass tacks of my operation. Now it is less cerebral and more physical in terms of what am I going to do. Even if you are a digital company, there are some physical aspects that you need to think about. And then therefore you need to. So this is again one of my mentee companies. As you can see, they are a techie company. They are into what they call teacher skill analysis, but they are very clear in their document here that how are you going to reach, what are they doing, and how are they going to offer these services to their potential customers. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, etc., etc., etc. And this is just one example, but depending on what your product is, what your service is, you can have different kind of details here in terms of how are you operationalizing your business. This, I'm sure I don't want to spend too much time here. Everybody understands what SWOT is, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We normally look at SWOT, but if you look at the alternate part of it, 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, strength and opportunities on the positive side, weakness and threat is sort of on the negative side, or what they call opportunity to improve side. Strength and opportunity is what I call internal to you, and weakness, strength and weakness is internal to you. Opportunity and threat is external to you. That's how you need to look at it. Again, when you look at opportunity in the market, it is not generic opportunity. There could be generic opportunities, but that opportunity need not be relevant to you. That's something that you need to understand. There could be generic threats in the marketplace. Some of those threats may be more valid to you. Some of those threats may be not valid for you as well. So opportunities and threats also have to be in the context of who you are, what your business is, where are you, so on and so forth. It's not generic kind of thing. Again, this is just an example from somewhere in terms of, if it's a rating agency, for example, again, a startup kind of thing, how do you want to look into what are the different strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Again, I don't want to get into the specifics. It's just an illustrative kind of example. Next part is on the financial. At the end of the day, your purpose of a business may not be making money, but your objective obviously has to be making money. And you need to be very clear in terms of what that making money is. And this is a very, very important part, but it can't be the only part of your business plan. This will come as an end point after you've gone through entire process in terms of all the first 7-8 steps that we talked about before we come into revenue projections. Typically, this would be looking something like this. That, okay, if I'm selling something, what are the units sold? There is a volume growth, there is a value growth, there is a cost of running that, which is a COGS, for example. Then therefore there is a gross margin. There could be other sales, general and administrative expenses I have. And therefore there is something called EBITDA, which is the core operating margin that I'm making. There could be, of course, the other kind of expenses, cash and non-cash, like depreciation and tax, and of course interest, if at all I'm paying any, there's a debt that I'm carrying, and then there's the profitability. These are just projections that you do, but obviously there is a lot of thought process that need to go behind these projections, because when you eventually go for funding, obviously all the questions would be around where has this come from, how confident you are of these, and what is the sensitivity or scenario kind of planning that you've done in terms of this. So there is an income. Of course, it says income statement, but as you can guess, it is income and expenditure or expenses statement. So it's a profitability statement, if you like. It's also called a P&L kind of analysis, profit and loss kind of analysis. Even if you're making loss, it's still called a profit and loss kind of statement. Essentially, it's an income and expense statement. The second most and perhaps more important than the income expense statement is what I call cash flow statement. And again, this is one thing that is unfortunately very less understood by startup founders, and I think I would say undervalued in terms of the significance of this when you are running your business. Finally, you know, a lot of these startup people might have heard of things like burn rate, runway. These are the terminologies used in startup business. What are burn rates? What are runways? It's a reflection of your cash flow. Yeah. So if I'm saying burn rate, it means how much cash I am burning on a monthly basis, for example, come what may. In a way, in simple business parlance, it is also called what are my fixed costs of running this business. Whether my shop is open or my shop is shut, whether government allows me to do business or has told me to be under lockdown, whether I am getting any revenues or not getting any revenues, what are my fixed costs, how much cash I'm burning on a fixed monthly basis. That's my burn rate. And runway, which means, okay, assuming this process, this situation unfortunately goes on for a longer period of time, how many months I can survive without really getting any revenues. Now, whether it's a startup or even largest of companies that we've heard in the last 4 months, we would have seen most of the businesses got shut down in mid or third week of March when the national lockdown happened. It went on till end of May. Slowly unlock started happening, but many of these businesses are still shut. So the question was that, okay, if for 2.5 months I have not been able to operate my business, and most of the business would have gone in that situation, but I still have fixed costs. And therefore, I am not earning anything, but I'm incurring everything every month. How do I ensure, for how long can I sustain my business without really actually going kaput? And that's where the cash flow understanding is very, very important. And this is how a typical core cash flow would look like. Again, formats are different. I don't want to get into this. I'm sure part of your founders talk or some other series, master classes, somebody else would be taking, understanding financial statements kind of thing. But essentially what we are trying to say is that there have to be an aggregation of all my cash inflows that are happening in my business, and an aggregation of all the cash expenditure that I'm making. And finally, end, I need to have a net cash flow, which ideally, over a period of time, I need to have a positive cash outflow, which means the cash that is coming in is higher than the cash that is going out. Now, again, just to sort of make it very clear, when I'm using the word cash in a demonetized world, I'm actually not saying cash and some suitcase full of cash. It is cash as in money coming in and money going out. And therefore, unfortunately, I'll just go back to my previous slide as well, that sometimes people say that, hey, I can see profits. And one of the pains of not understanding financial statements is that you might be a profitable company, but you may not have enough money in your bank. Your bank balance might be abysmally low. You might be a loss-making company and your bank balance might be quite healthy. So there is not necessarily a direct correlation between your profitability or the profit you are making and your cash flow statement and the cash on hand. Over a period of time, there will be a correlation. In the initial time, there will not be, because there is an issue in terms of accounting entry versus actual entry. When you sell something and you raise an invoice, it will show in your revenue. Unless your customer pays, your money will not be in your bank. And therefore, there's sometimes, depending on which business you are, there is a gap in terms of your profitability versus your money in the bank. And when you're looking at cash flow, in an ideal world, once you start becoming slightly more mature and understanding how the finance works, you need to think of these three kind of cash flows. A core cash flow is what I call cash flow that comes from your operating activities. Whichever business you've chosen, the operating activity, the operations of that business, whether you are selling that product or selling that service, there's a cash flow emanating from those. There is a cash flow that will come either positive or negative from investments. If you're a tech company, you will need to keep on investing into product development, into further product development, new versions, debugging, all that part. And then there could be a third kind of cash flow that goes into financing kind of activities, which means you will need some funding and it will get into funding for that investment or funding for that operations. So a good, mature, steady state company will have positive operating cash flows, and that positive cash flow from operating activities will go into investment and will go sort of releasing some of your debts or some of your funding that you've got, so that eventually it becomes equity financed. So that's the kind of thing that you need to have. Can I just take 5 more minutes before we kind of thing? We have some time, Srinath?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So these 9-10 things are important when we are sort of developing your own business plan. Having said that, after spending so much time, effort, like they say, sweat and kind of tears sometimes in creating this business plan, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, business plan is not something as if it's cast in stone. Hey, August of 2020, thanks to this workshop, next 2 weeks, I've created a business plan. It's for 3 years. So I need to look at my business plan only 3 years hence. Unfortunately, no. You need to keep on updating that business plan. And there could be reasons why you need to update, when you need to update. And let's quickly look at what could be the reasons. So why should you consider updating your business plan? First and foremost, your business plan should get updated once you move into a new financial period. For most of us, from an Indian perspective, the financial period is April to March. So if you have a business plan now and in August of 2020, even if it's for come February, come March of 2021, have a relook at your business plan, saying that, hey, 7-8 months ago, we did create this that was valid for FY 21-22. How much of that is still valid? What are the assumptions that have changed? What are the market conditionalities that have changed? And do I need to tweak my first year of my business plan now that I'm getting into a new financial period? So that's one valid reason why you definitely need to look into a business plan. The second reason from a startup perspective is that if there is a reason to need additional funding, whether it is your own bootstrap, whether it is your friends and family, whether it's some angel, whether you're going some series A, B, C, etc., wherever there is a need for additional funding, when you are pitching that to anybody who wants to give you money, you'll need to again relook at your business plan. Because I might have raised some funds now and I'm okay for the next 6 months, but maybe somewhere Jan, Feb or March next year, I might need additional funding. I need to tweak my business plan, saying that what did I do with the funds available? How did I reach? What were my projections versus my actual then? And therefore, how do I look at now? Yeah, so you need to look into that. Could be one more reason. The third could be if there is a serious market discontinuity, like all of us are facing there in the picture that I saw, not that earthquake, not that flood, but this pandemic of COVID that we have. It's a serious discontinuity. Nobody had thought of it. Nobody still understands the extent of it. We're all, looking at news about some vaccine, Oxford, this, that, etc., etc. Nobody knows what. People are already talking of post-COVID. Mind you, we are not post-COVID. We are still during COVID. Post-COVID will take some time. And therefore, if there's a serious, so, if you've started your business, say in last November, and you did that validation, you did that business plan, but obviously in your business plan, there was no mention of COVID. And now last 4 months, you're stuck with this, maybe because of government regulation, you've had to stop your business. I'm working with one of the startup companies. I'm a mentor there, where their entire business was related to sports related travel, sports related leisure travel. Yeah, I want to go because there's a T20 World Cup happening in Australia. I want to go to Australia. I want to see obviously a couple of matches, but I also want to visit some couple of cities in Australia. I go to Wimbledon every year, and of course, I would see a couple of matches. If I'm rich enough, I might get a ticket or two at the finals also. But I'm not just going to go for Wimbledon. While I'm in UK, I want to do some touristy activities there. So this is their business. Now imagine what has happened to the business. Nothing. Zero. So that's a serious discontinuity here. And therefore, obviously, all the things that they had thought through earlier in terms of what kind of revenues, they had bought tickets for Wimbledon, they had bought tickets for French Open, they had bought tickets for English Premier League because that's another sport. Everything has gone kaput for them. So obviously, they need to look into seriously in terms of this is the discontinuity. Now, how do I need to change my business plan? There is no option but to change my business plan. So that's another kind of thing. If you think that now suddenly there's a new idea, new product, new service, or a new technology which was hitherto available to you, and now you want to incorporate that in your business plan, again, that could be one more reasons why you need to look into your business plan. Finally, just a quick checklist in terms of this, my last slide, Srinath. What could be the different things that we've talked about? Vision, description about my company, my product and services, market reality, SWOT, marketing plan, operating plan, team, and my financials. That's the quick checklist in terms of creating my own business plan. Ideally, yes, of course, there are plenty of templates, like I said, available off the net. Don't get driven by them. Be clear. They are for you. You are not for them. Yeah. So you need to customize and create, and that's why I'm using the word your own business plan. Yeah, I think just about any more questions, more than happy to take.
Yes, sir. So, I mean, there's been a couple of questions, but I think, somebody asked for the checklist and you've given the checklist. I think one question that, I wanted to ask you regarding the session was, do you think about the business plan whether that you make that into a deck or something else? Does it change for different stakeholders in terms of priority, or do you think it's supposed to stay the same?
Yeah, in a longer version of this session, I have an entire session in terms of the types of business plan. But to quickly answer your question, see, when you're doing a deck, okay, like I said, I have done this presentation in 50 minutes. I have a different version where I do a two-day very interactive workshop on the same topic. Yeah. So the detail in which you want to go would change. Yeah. Everybody understands what is very commonly known as an elevator pitch, which is supposed to be 30 seconds or 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute, kind of, different VCs have that kind of thing. My whole thing is your story can't change. Yeah. Unlike what we have seen, it's a well-known kind of thing in hardcore corporate life that, when I'm preparing my budget, there is one budget for the board. There is a different budget which is internally. There is a third version for the bankers to get my money. We are not, as a startup, we shouldn't be in that business. So it can be a detailed business plan, a bridge business plan, something that I can talk about for 1 minute, something where given an opportunity, I can talk for 10 minutes, but my story cannot change. Whether it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes, my storyline has to be same. Because I have 30 minutes, I'm going to talk a lot. Because I have only 30 seconds, I can't talk a lot. But I can't say, just because I have 30 seconds, I say that in 3 years, I'll be 1 million. And if I have 30 minutes, because I have time, in 3 years, I'll be 20 million. Yeah, you can't change your story. You kind of thing. So yes, there will be different versions of a business plan, but not different versions of your financial plan. It is whether it's abridged or it is more detailed. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, sir, definitely. Yes, sir. And I think with time, you've answered a lot of the audience questions that we've gotten as well. And I think with this, we will be concluding today's session. It was an absolutely amazing session, sir. And we had some great questions from the audience as well.
Yes, definitely.
That fit perfectly there. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tina. Thanks again, Darshan and Madhuri and your team. Thanks, Flame. It was good talking to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. So guys, so the rest of everybody staying here, tune in same time on Wednesday next week. We'll be having Mrs. Monica Mehta from the Badwani Foundation. So she will be talking about next gen startup ideas. And for all of the folks that are interested in startups and venture capital and that line, definitely tune in as well. And you'll be sent the registration places pretty soon. So I will see you in the next session. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for tuning in.